Right now, Bitcoin is caught in what you could only call a perfect storm. You've got this massive selling pressure on one side, clashing with the potential for truly game-changing regulation on the other. It's creating this period of just intense volatility. So let's break down exactly what's going on. First things first, let's just get right to the headline number. Bitcoin has tanked, down roughly 30% from its recent peak. Look, this isn't just some minor dip, it's a serious correction, and it has the entire market completely on edge. So, the big question on everyone's mind is, why? What is actually causing this free fall? Well, the answer is a really potent mix of different forces, and we're about to break them all down for you one by one.
Okay, let's start by just getting a real sense of the scale of this correction. We're talking about a market that has been fundamentally shaken, and it's pushed the overall feeling, the sentiment, to an absolute extreme low.
As of right now, the market is officially in a state of extreme fear. Prices have been crashing through key psychological levels, and that's just fueling the kind of widespread anxiety that can, lead to even bigger sell-offs.
So where is all this pressure actually coming from? Well, it really boils down to two major forces that are squeezing the price from completely different directions. Let's take a look at the first one.
First up, you've got these broad economic jitters. The hope that the U.S. Federal Reserve was going to cut interest rates soon, that's pretty much fading. And when rates stay high, safer things that earn interest start to look way more attractive than riskier assets like Bitcoin. And to top it all off, we're seeing weakness in big U.S. tech stocks, which tend to move with crypto, and they're dragging the whole market down with them.
And that brings us to the second, and maybe even bigger pressure point, institutional stress. You know, all that big money that came flooding into Bitcoin through those new ETFs? Well, suddenly, they've slammed on the brakes. The buying has slowed way down, and even worse, a lot of those new institutional investors are now systematically selling off what they bought. And just to put a hard number on that selling pressure, we're talking about the US spot Bitcoin ETFs seeing net outflows of around $2.8 billion just this month alone. That is a massive amount of money running for the exits, and it's pulled a huge pillar of support right out from under the price.
Now this chart, this really shows you the mood of the market. The Crypto Fear and Greed Index has absolutely plunged to just 15 out of 100. This isn't just people being cautious, this is straight-up extreme fear. And it reflects this widespread panic that can easily become a self-fulfilling prophecy of more and more selling.
But amidst all this chaos, there is one number that matters more than any other right now. A single price that could be the deciding factor in whether this correction stabilizes or if it accelerates into something much, much worse.
And that number is $89,600. Why is that specific number so important? Because that's the average price that these new big money institutions paid for their Bitcoin through the ETFs. If the price stays below this line, it means that as a group, they're officially underwater, losing money on their investment for the very first time.
And this is where things could get really dicey. It's a potential domino effect. See, once the price breaks below that critical level, a lot of these institutions have automated risk management rules that could just force them to sell. That would trigger a cascade of liquidations, which would just accelerate the drop even further. It's like the market's biggest tripwire right now.
Okay, so that's the storm. But while the market is getting hammered, there's this massive development brewing on the horizon that could literally change everything. It's a potential catalyst that could build the case for a very, very different future.
So here's the big question. Could one single piece of legislation completely flip this entire negative story on its head? A lot of people in the industry think the answer to that is a resounding yes.
You know, for years, the single biggest problem holding back crypto in the US has been just total confusion. Is Bitcoin a security, something the SEC should regulate, or is it a commodity which falls under the CFTC? This uncertainty has scared away the big banks. The Clarity Act is designed to solve this mess once and for all by clearly saying Bitcoin is a commodity and the CFTC is in charge.
And the impact of that kind of clarity? It would be enormous. It basically gives traditional banks the regulatory green light they've been waiting for to finally hold and trade crypto for their clients. We're talking about unlocking a potential tidal wave of new capital from traditional finance, which would just fundamentally change the entire market.
So what could that actually look like in terms of price? Well, some of the more bullish analysts believe that this regulatory clarity, combined with other economic factors, could push Bitcoin's price all the way up toward $170,000 in the medium term.
All right, so the all-important question, when could this actually happen? The bill has already passed the House, which is huge. The White House and some market watchers are hopeful for the end of 2025, but the most serious political prediction, based on what Senate leadership is saying, points to a vote and it becoming law in early 2026.
Okay, so let's tie these two completely different stories together. You've got this dangerous storm hammering the market right now, and then you have the potential for clear skies just over the horizon.
There's actually a perfect metaphor to capture this whole moment. Think of Bitcoin as a giant ship, one that's heavily loaded with all this new cargo. That's the institutional money. Right now, that ship is sailing through a really violent storm. That's all the market fear. The critical point, the thing that matters most, is whether that ship can stay above the waterline, that $89,600 mark, long enough for the storm to finally pass.
And that leaves us with the ultimate question. It's a battle between this immense short-term fear and the promise of long-term clarity. Is the immediate selling pressure going to sink the ship before it can reach calmer waters? Or will the promise of clear regulation act like a lighthouse, guiding it safely into harbor? The answer to that is going to define the entire next chapter for Bitcoin.